met. I think everybody here knows each other. Skip, welcome. Thank you for crossing the bridge. I really appreciate it. I hope it wasn't too troublesome, and thank you, Rose.
I always thank you. Come to me.
I met Michael and Jenny. First of all, Mary Higgins. I'm a former Corcoran graduate, as we were saying. I met Michael and Jenny at an AU opening through YAR. And we just had this really dynamic conversation, as one has with Jenny and Michael. And in the course of the conversation, I learned that they lived, at the time, right across the street. And of course, being the person that I am, I'm like, come visit me. And then that went, followed other discussions and meeting up, I think, at Out of Rose's gallery for the carte blanche show. And, and then there was a little, love to see, artist, husband-wife duo proposal from you. And it was sort of a natural for me because my very first show that I staged here was a husband and wife duo, and creative partnerships are part of art history, and I just thought it was interesting. But I had no idea how much fun I would have. So with that, we'll start with Michael.
All right. All right, so Jenny and I met at AU during grad school. We were in the same year program, and I remember her coming in, and I thought, there's this adorable Asian girl, I've got to know who she is. So we became friends, and there was a process she was starting to develop that led into what she's doing now, and I just fell in love with it because she was starting to experiment with paint and using paint as object, rather than painting with it. And I told her, I remember, I said, if you don't keep going with this, I'm going to steal it. But she did keep going with it, fortunately. And at the time, I was trying to experiment with new things because during my undergrad, I was working with mostly assemblage and found object work. But I wanted to use that time there to experiment with new things and kind of branch out into something different. So after a ton of different ideas that just got torn to shreds that first semester, I finally said, you know what, for now I'm just going to play around with some collage. But it ended up being I didn't want to work with collage and analog collage in the same way that I was used to, cutting apart magazines, creating a entirely new narrative and scene with those. And I had this collection of old magazines that I had since I was a teenager. And I'd held on to these things forever. And I thought, well, why don't we do something with those, let's see what we can do with those. You're carrying these things around for over a decade, a couple of decades, really. What do you want to do with these? But I quickly discovered that I couldn't bring myself to just cut them apart piecemeal and just shred them. So I thought there's got to be a more direct way to reveal the contents of these magazines and what I love about them. And I'd also spent time as a TA at AU, and I watched these kids shred apart magazines. You got paper all over the floor, and I was responsible for cleaning that up. So it was literally, baskets full of nothing but shredded paper. I thought, man, there's so much waste here. There's got to be a more direct way. And so I started experimenting with the magazines that I had, and I thought, why not just reveal the parts of the magazine that I love and reduce it to those? Let's take away the stuff that I really don't care about, some of the noise, and just try and reveal to the audience what it is I love about that magazine. But at the time, I was gluing them down as I was cutting them, so it became this really stiff kind of object. It removed the function of the magazine to it, and I liked what was happening with the imagery, but it wasn't quite what I was looking for. I had spent the summer before working with that, with the works of Jess, because there was a large show that was going on there at AU at the time. And I really wanted to get a type of density that Jess's work had. There was so much going on in those collages, and I thought, can we do this with a magazine? And so that was the first iteration of it, but it still wasn't quite doing what I wanted it to do. And so then, this was the first, I would say, successful piece that started pushing me in the direction that I ended up in. But I was still gluing down, but there was things going on with it, you know, trying different cuts, different layers, and just seeing what could happen if things start popping through other images. And to some degree, I really loved that piece. I still do, because, you know, it's kind of the impetus of everything. And then I decided, well, let's see if we can like push that farther. Once again, still gluing it down, still hadn't gotten over that part yet. And so I was playing around with Rolling Stones, you know, seeing what I could do with like cutting out like Bob Dylan's face and revealing some of the contents on the inside, but playing with color instead, color pattern, things like that. So all these different elements I was starting to like, but there was different elements in each of these that I was really enjoying, but not one of them embodied all of it. So when it came time for preparing for our first thesis show, it ended up being that I decided, well, we're gluing these things down, why don't we make them so that you can still turn the pages and return the functionality back to them while still kind of cutting them and pasting them down. And when the thesis show was going on, they were kind of secured to a wall with a piece of plexiglass so that people could come up and still turn the pages and play with them. I quickly found out, though, that people were extremely turned off to the way that they looked. They felt like they were extremely old because of the crinkling from the glue. They felt that maybe they were fragile, and despite having a big sign on the wall that says, "Please touch," very few people were brave enough to come up and actually play with them. So Jenny and I were both at the thesis show playing with these things just to get people to come over and do something with them. And it worked to some degree. But I realized, you know, I didn't like the crinkling either. Making the pages turn wasn't that important to me. So the following summer, just before the second year started, I started working with the magazines in fairly the same way that I'm doing now, and experimenting with using the binding to hold it all together and not gluing it. I wanted it to just be the object it is and remove that functionality once again of turning the pages. And so I was able to start cutting into them, just removing material, and it had this wonderful relief effect to it that I really enjoyed, and I was able to bring out more of a denser imagery out of it. And I think over that course, I was still working with magazines in a little bit of a way where I was familiar with the contents on the inside, so I was kind of making decisions based off my knowledge of the content in there. Later on, I discovered that I was getting far better results if I didn't spend time with the magazine before I started cutting. So part of that was just using that magazine and my exploration of the material to kind of tell a story almost. So I would start with the front page, find something that really interested me, and then I would cut around that and peel away the rest. And then I would work page by page through that magazine, doing the same thing until I couldn't go any farther or reach the back. And what ended up happening was, you know, things start having narratives with each other that don't normally become very obvious when you're just flipping through pages. You know, because you see all these different editorial choices, you see all these contributions from different elements, and each page or each several pages can be their own element, and you don't really make associations in so much as, you know, maybe it's cosmopolitan, so it's got an overarching theme. But there's things going on the inside that have a narrative that you won't make associations with unless you can step back and take a look at it. So that's what started happening with those, is I started realizing that it wasn't just my exploration of the material that I was recording by cutting things away and recording things that I enjoyed and my own prejudices, but I was starting to release a sort of subconscious to the material. There were new narratives, new dialogues that were happening that I didn't even realize were there. And so, you know, as you can see with some of the works in there, there's these little things that are happening between advertisements and some of the full page, color images that they have in there that, have associations maybe that, they're not very obvious. So that's pretty much where I was at. Right now, as far as my work goes, I enjoy the magazines. I still intend to keep cutting those because it's something that's become a little bit of a habit for me. And if I go a long period of time not cutting one, you kind of like start jonesing, I gotta cut something. It's become a little bit of an obsession. But I also started feeling here recently that those magazines were kind of a study for something bigger. Those pieces are very quiet, small pieces, and they can get absorbed pretty easy in a large group show. So what I wanted to start doing was kind of using those as a study, and I've begun collecting several issues of the same magazine when I go to buy them. So I'll buy maybe 3 or 4 copies of it, one to archive, one to cut. And then one I'll take, if it's a very successful piece and I really enjoy what's going on with the cut magazine, I'll then take an uncut one, cut the binding off, and I'll scan only the pages in that were kept in the cut version. And so what I'm doing is I take that high resolution images and I re-collage them digitally into a new narrative, a new kind of dialogue. And then those are blown up into a large thing, maybe 30 by 40 larger, that show the print dots, because I want it to be important that people realize where the material came from. So it has to reference the original magazine. Hi, welcome. But those are things I'm working on now, concepts I'm playing around with, and I feel like I like the direction it's going, so hopefully sometime in the near future we can get some of these printed up and have a show where, we've got one issue of a magazine that's cut and then all these different iterations of all those elements that were kept in it and see where that goes. So that's my work. Jenny?
So if you haven't seen the show yet, like my work is kind of 2 groups. The left one is I have a lot of like little panels on the wall and have the cassette tape installation in the back. So last month I went to an artist talk, Jeff Schlesinger. He did his talk backwards. So I thought that was quite interesting. So I'm gonna do the same thing. Yeah. Any questions? Thank you for coming. Just kidding. So before graduate school, I was doing a lot of plein air paintings. I was out there painting a landscape, get up early in the morning. So that kind of sums up my work before graduate school. And eventually I realized I was doing straight white male paintings. No offense to a straight white male sitting here, but that's not me. So when I started in graduate school, I realized that I love painting the nature. I also love very thick paint. When I paint oil, it takes forever to dry. When I glaze ceramics, I put a lot of glaze on that. You can always hear technicians scream, "Who the fuck put so much glaze on that? You could blow up the kiln." I was like, "Oh, that's me. So sorry. That won't happen again." But next time, I still put a lot of glaze on that. So that's like just a habit that I have. I don't know why. I just love very thick paint. So I was thinking, if I love thick paint, why do I use oil? It's so expensive. Why don't I use house paint? It's so much cheaper. And I was buying those Oops paint when the Home Depot or like Ace Hardware, when they mix their own color, they sell those for like $5 for a whole gallon. So I was buying gallons and gallons of paint and I'm pouring them on the floor. And there you can see on my studio floor, I was pouring them, letting them dry. And I also collected a lot of paint cans. I don't know why, I just like them. I like the drip of the paint on the side of the paint cans. Sometimes when I find on the bottom of the paint when it's already super dry, this one, I put it on the canvas and I pour more paint on it. And I don't know if you guys watch like BuzzFeed Tasty videos. It's like the online recipe. They always, make a cake and then do the cross-section cut. I know lots of like YouTube cooking channels, they always do the cross-section cut. And I started cutting them because I want to see what is inside. And after that, I was like, those cross sections kind of interesting. I wonder what would happen if I put a lot more layers and let them dry. So I started buying more paint and I poured them, let them dry. After a week or so, put them in a layer and let them dry. And this is the first one that I did. I bought a little like glass frame. If it's glass, when I cut with the X-Acto knife, it won't destroy the glass. It was like have a clear cut, I'll pull it out, and it just layered like one after another on the canvas. So you see on the bottom, it was kind of straight, and eventually a little bit curved all the way to the top. It's like a very big curve. So that's the first, I call it oops, because I bought a lot of oops paint for that piece. At around the same time, I was working at university, Venter. They archive a lot of Diane Rehm shows, and this is exactly what happened. One day I went to work, my boss said to me, Jenny, you're a weirdo. I have 3,000 Diane Rehm show cassette tapes, would you like to have them? And I said, of course, when can I pick them up? So I got a little push cart, I went to the library, got all the cassette tapes. This is what a 3,000 Diane Rehm show looked like on my studio floor. I had them sitting in my studio for a couple months. I didn't know what to do with them. Like I knew I gotta do something, because who else in the world has 3,000 Diane Rehm shows on their hands, right? I gotta do something, but I don't know what to do. Like I almost feel like I need to respect this dying media. Like I feel like I can't really do anything to it because they're so precious and they're slowly disappearing. It's like almost like endangered species. Like I just have to protect them. But one day I just like, screw it. I opened one. I think my tendency to open things up, to examine inside, came from my dad. Back in the days when your radio broke or whatever home appliances broke, you fix it.